Coming to you from a portable microphone, this is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Let's ease into the new year with the very mellow Mike Geiger. I'm recording this separately way after we recorded the conversation because since we recorded this, he has left David and Goliath and went on to be co-founder and CEO at Wolfgang in LA. I found it very interesting to listen to this conversation knowing that he left shortly after we recorded it. It kind of changes the way that you listen to his answers and the tone of the conversation. Also, at the very end, if you've listened to these podcasts, you know that I give out contact information. Obviously, it's wrong at the end of that. But if you do want to reach Mike after you hear this, his email address is mike@wolfgangla.com. Now let's get to the chat. Thank you so very much for continuing to listen to these conversations and enabling me to have them, because for me, this is the best part of my week, getting to sit down with some of the most interesting people in advertising and communication arts. And sitting here with Mike Geiger, who is holding in his hand what I think is a pretty cool leave behind. So Chris Davis, who's a copywriter about to graduate, who's already graduated once this is out there, giving away little plastic airplane bottles of whiskey with his logo on it. And when we start the conversation, I want to see what Mike, a digital dude, thinks of this tangible, real world, tactile double shot of whiskey as a giveaway. I like it because it's a thing that I'll actually use versus some other leave behind that a student might leave that I think I would just easily ignore. But I'm also going to crib this intro from Tyler Emmons, who did a great introduction for Mike at the forum. I'm going to read you what he wrote after I remind you to go onto Facebook, facebook.com/DGMS podcast, like the podcast page, because that's where I'm going to put links for you. And free of charge, I'm saving you a step on the internet. It will automatically come to you where you don't even have to type Mike Geiger into your search bar. It's all right there, and Facebook's just going to give it to you right there. But I do recommend that you type Mike Geiger into your search bar and check out his background. It's been stellar and significant. But I'm going to read you what was written by Tyler, because he did the homework. Today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Mr. Mike Geiger, Managing Partner and Chief Digital Officer of David & Goliath. He previously worked at Goodby, Silverstein & Partners, where he actually started the interactive department there, and then eventually he became the agency's first Chief Digital Officer back in 2008. He was also the President and Chief Integration Officer at J. Walter Thompson, a.k.a. JWT, where the work he's produced has won numerous awards. Upon arriving at David & Goliath, which was, I believe, about 1 year, 3 months ago, Mike was really looking forward to being close to the work and creative process again, as well as really building out digital practice at the growing shop. David & Goliath has a track record of being a aptly named challenger agency. We can talk about that. A close-to-the-bone, risk-taking shop, and I think that we're going to talk a little bit. What I want to talk about with Mike today is the disparate cultures shifting. Having the first thing he said to me today when I said hi to him at lunch was that it's culture shock moving to LA to a relatively smaller agency, and the list of awards is impressive. A lot of them were probably original. First-time agencies have won these kind of awards, Digital Agency of the Year and those kind of things. Mike also, I want to add, is a great friend of the school. He's been on the Creative Circus Advisory Board going on, I don't even know how many years, a long time. Last time he was on this podcast was 6 years ago, and it's just great to see him. He has lost weight and looks younger, which is phenomenal and impressive. And welcome back to school. Welcome back to the microphone.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Dan.
That was a long-winded way of saying, hey, Mike. So thank you so much for doing this with me. Thanks for coming down to school. What do you think of that little whiskey bottle?
Actually, I like it. Well, it depends. Let's see what it tastes like, right?
Open it.
Yeah.
You want to open it?
I hope he didn't brew it himself.
No, I think he probably, well, knowing him. No, he probably, I don't know if he's...
That's real.
Let's see how it tastes.
Ooh.
It's straight whiskey.
Yeah, it is.
Do you drink whiskey?
No, I don't. But I like it because, as you mentioned before, it's useful.
Right.
You know, and it's a good logo. You know, his phone number really big on it, and his URL. I think it's a good idea.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about last time we talked, you were still at Goodby Silverstein and Partners, which I have to say, I cannot say Goodby. It's Goodby Silverstein and Partners.
Right. Rich's going to get mad.
Rich will get mad. He'll find it. Somehow he'll find out. I don't blame him. Talked a little bit about the first question I asked you, which I wanted. Let's start there. What is your job now? Your title, which to me is kind of hard to understand. Managing Partner and Chief Digital Officer. Explain to me what your role is now as a creative, as an agency leader. Let's think about those two things to start off.
Well, it's really, it's just a title. So
Right.
basically, Managing Partner, we have a founder, David Angelo, and then we have 4 managing partners. Mm-hmm. And they hired me as a 4th managing partner. And my focus is really digital, right?
Do you feel like there's still like a significant chasm between traditional and digital? Talk about that. I mean, like, is it starting yet to feel like the word digital is a redundant, unnecessary word, or is that still a relevant word?
I think it shouldn't be, but it's still relevant, quite honestly. I mean, one of the problems is, when I mentioned that earlier, digital is such a broad term, right?
Right.
Because pretty much everything is digital.
Right.
But I think when you say digital as in chief digital officer, some people might think, oh, you don't really need that. But actually, more and more even clients create a chief digital officer role, because clients, as same as agencies, got to become more fluent in digital still, more integrated, So
how often have you run up in your career against creatives who just have a block there? They're still thinking in scripts.
Okay. All the time. It happens daily, but a lot of times I feel like there's nothing wrong with it, right? If someone is a pure traditional creative and that person is really good at it, why change them? In order to be also good digital creative, you gotta want to learn it.
Right.
If you're not really that interested, you'll never be good at it.
What is that? Okay, maybe you haven't given it that much thought. What is it about the person? Okay, so you are generally a tinkerer, curious guy, right? Is it something?
Somewhat.
Right. So in my experience, my partners and friends who have been successful in digital, but they're my generation, are the people who like to experiment with the technology of it. Maybe, I don't know. What's the difference if I'm thinking about like my career? I'm putting my head in sort of a young person's mind. Like, okay, if maybe I can write headlines. I think in scripts naturally because that's how I see things. But what is it? What kind of trait do you think leads a young creative into being successful as a digital person? And what is it about the better digital creatives that you see that's a trait that you could identify?
Well, I don't think young people really have that problem anymore. It's a little older ones, because now, because the younger people now, they grow up in a total different environment.
Right, so they can't write digital.
You don't even have to explain to them, like a Snapchat or this or that. Right. They grow up with it, so they think differently. But yeah, in general, I think for an agency, even like Goodby, which was extremely traditional 20 years ago, whenever it was, or 15, there were a lot of traditional creatives. Then we hired quite a few digital specialists with the hope to turn some of those pure traditional creatives around to become more integrated. And it worked pretty well. Depending on the work you do for clients, eventually you might definitely need some pure digital creatives. Like if you would want to do a .com or whatnot.
Right.
You will always need some people who are really good in TV, just to do TV.
Right.
And even now, you can, I think even for traditional creatives, a lot of opportunities with short films.
Right, that's right.
Longer version ads, just put them on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So, you need all those people. And you're going to have people, probably the majority, which should be somewhat integrated.
Yeah. I think I cut you off before you made your point about the digital, everything's digital, but when you define digital in your mind, it's interactive.
For me, it was always interactive.
Yeah.
I think, none of those is a perfect description, but I feel like interactive reads out some of, for example, I talk to some people and for them, digital is like a TV spot on YouTube. And then you're like, well...
Delivered digitally, but it's not really...
Exactly. That's why I like to call them some inactive. You have to interact with it.
That's right.
So
talk to me about culture shock. Talk to me about the move from JWT, New York, big place, to California. Let's start with that move. Let's talk about that.
Well, the funny thing is LA is a big place too, right? But you just can't compare it.
Personally, what were your adjustments? Like, what did it feel like moving in? Or was the first day sort of like, what the hell did I do? Like, talk a little bit about what it felt like to go to the smaller environment, the more sort of scrappy environment, independent agency, that kind of stuff.
Well, I felt like so that I wouldn't have to worry too much about a culture shock, since when I started at Goodby, it was a similar situation. It was the same size as what David and Goliath was now.
Interesting.
Goodby didn't really know any digital, and David Goliath actually knows more digital. And so I figured, it's not going to be too crazy, right? But I think there are a couple differences. So agency-wise, it's an independent shop.
What does that mean?
There's no holding company
Practically
involved.
speaking, what does that mean?
Practically speaking, on the higher level, you are not held to profit margins, revenue margins. You kind of are, but David Angel is a founder. He can do whatever he wants, adjust him or not. He can invest in anything he wants or not.
Right.
If you're owned by a holding company, this is like a JWT and WPP was a holding company, that would not fly. Mm-hmm. So that's a fairly big difference. So when David would go, I want to invest in digital and blow it out, we have to integrate more. And that's his decision. No one can tell him you can't do that. Right. And that's very nice.
Really,
that's
awesome.
great.
It's awesome.
And he's a believer in it, so he just does it, and it's great. I think for me, the biggest difference was really the city itself, because LA is it's not one city, it's like a lot of small cities combined, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like I live in the South Bay, but then you have Venice and you have whatever, Beverly Hills or whatnot. It's all different, right? Mm-hmm. So I live in a bubble right now, which is great. It's on the beach, 10 minutes to work. My shortest commute ever, awesome. Which is kind of crazy in LA.
It is crazy.
But then New York had all this crazy energy, which I do miss for sure,
Could feel it.
And I loved it, I loved that energy. At the same time, there's things in LA I really love,
What?
So, a lot of things. People are more mellow in general. I like the weather. I'm not going to lie about it. I like the beach. A better lifestyle if you have a family, for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting because someone else interviewed me and a couple other guys about East Coast versus West Coast, and so many people are now moving from New York to Los Angeles, and everyone tried to sell LA, why you can bloom so much more in LA than in New York with Hollywood and entertainment. I think quite honestly, it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
If you're a good creative, you can work anywhere you want,
right.
And you can do a good job. It more like depends on the culture of the agency,
right? I agree.
What you stand behind, but location has nothing to do with it, in my opinion.
Right. You're not sitting down to work on ideas on a Hollywood set with actors. You're doing your job.
Agency's been talking for years now with the intersection of Hollywood and advertising, but no one's done anything really.
I think Prayer and Adele's done some cool stuff.
Well, I did a little thing, but you can't really say, hey, we are in Hollywood now.
They're not, right. They're not in Hollywood, and they just, you can do that if you're from Kansas.
In San Francisco.
Right, that's what I mean? Right, you can use Hollywood from Kansas City. You don't need to be in LA to use Hollywood.
What's exciting about Los Angeles is, and that's definitely true, is a lot of people are moving, companies are moving for not moving but expanding to Los Angeles. So Google Zoo just opened a fairly nice big office in Venice.
What is that?
Google Zoo is like where the Google's innovation arm kind of, where they do the cool shit.
That's cool.
Then I just heard Amazon is taking over the Toyota campus.
Oh, wow.
I know Sony is starting a campus. Facebook is starting a campus. And it's all like in the Playa Vista area close to the airport. So, and they're all hiring creatives. Yeah. Cool. And every kind of people. Agencies are doing really well. You know, Deutsch is probably 600 people already, 500-600. 72 is doing really well. Yeah, we're 72 only like 5 years ago. They were tiny. Yeah. You know. So it's a good environment down there, and you can feel it. You can feel it's a good vibe down there. You know.
That's really cool. So did the job remind you? Did you have the similar feelings of sort of bringing a relatively traditional agency up to speed digitally? Did it feel like the Goodby days to you a little bit when you got there? Or I mean, obviously it's I think 15 years later, or whatever, 10 years later, so it's going to be different. I mean,
I think it's definitely different. Mm-hmm. I think Goodby #1 was already an extremely awarded agency everyone knew about. Mm-hmm. It's one of the hardest agencies already, right?
And they're craftsmen. They always have been.
Craftsmen.
Intelligent and really insightful work.
Yeah. Then the second thing is they had a different type of clients. You know. Now today I talked a little bit about the challenger mentality and even our clients who are challengers. I think Goodby had HP, you know. Back then we had Southern, but we had E-Trade, and those were like big clients, and also we had more clients, right? Mm-hmm. And I also think the times were different, you know. Client really pushed so hard for digital. It seemed like it was easier to sell almost.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Is that easier to sell, meaning like if you have something, it's good, versus now where if you have something, it has to also be good? You know what I mean?
Well, I feel like back in the days it was, there were the digital agencies. You know, when I first started and I worked on HP, we did all the traditional work, TV spots, print. And then they had Modem Media, FCBI, and McCann doing all the digital work. Right. But once they realized, actually, Goodby, they're not bad. So we started out with small projects. Some banner here, some microsite here. And then they realized, oh my God, they actually can do it. And most clients they prefer to just deal with one agency.
Right, okay.
You know, and at the same time the work, like we as a Goodby understands the whole branding. So they're like, oh man, they can do it all. This is like ideal, you know. So we won more and more business from those agencies, and those agencies then just kept the .com or whatnot. But I think we did a really good job selling the integrated work. But we also presented everything in an integrated fashion. Then once we got pretty good in digital, we started to pitch with our digital work. And you know, Rich and Jeff are extremely smart. Say at that time they had no idea about digital, but they were. It's so important that we are relevant. Rich always called it, we got to be relevant. As long as we're relevant, you're fine.
Yeah. So you take that ethos with you now. Is the way that you approach client work now? I'm assuming this is almost a stupid question. Everything has to be presented as integrated, right? Is that how D&G works?
Well, we're working on that. Mm-hmm. You know, when I started at D&G, and it's not even D&G's fault a lot of times. A lot of times, even the clients we have. Right.
Don't you spend how much time? Did anyone tell you this when you started? Did they teach you this when you were to get your MBA? That most of your education is going to be educating your clients, teaching. Yeah. I mean, they didn't tell you that, right?
No, of course not. But yeah, when I started at D&G, digital was still called for a lot of clients extensions.
Oh wow!
So there's a TV work. Oh no, let's look at your extensions. You know, that's the first thing. I was like, God, you can't call digital extensions.
It's not extensions to the consumer.
Not in today's day and age.
No.
especially, you know.
It's the first thing often.
So there's a lot of things you have to change, and a lot of those things take time as well.
Are you frustrated? Do you ever feel frustrated?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
You don't show it though, ever, do you?
No, you can't. You'd be a miserable person. You know, I love what I do, and I learned so much, especially from Rich and Jeff. I have a good life. You can't just worry about all this.
Yeah, that's great.
You
never did?
Nah, not really.
That's great.
As long as I have fun, overall, it's all good.
So you have a business degree and an MBA, right?
Yeah.
So what did you learn anything from those? I mean,
I would say
What did you get from those experiences?
Well, quite honestly, since I went to high school in Germany, and high school in Germany is hard. So I would say I didn't learn anything in college except English. You know?
Okay.
My English was really, really bad when I started.
They don't teach you that in high school?
Yeah, but I was not a good student. Okay. And then...
You're a tennis player.
Yeah. I was just sports on my mind,
yeah.
you know. So, but then when I went to business school, I learned a lot. Because business school was more like... It's kind of like management consulting, right? Because they give you projects.
Right.
Like real-life projects.
So that's good training, actually.
You work in a team setting, so I learned a lot. And, I mean, I learned a lot during my MBA, I would say. You know, and it helped me later on. Even so, a lot of times you would go, "You're in advertising? Where did you get an MBA?"
Yeah, right.
You know, so
there's an accident.
But I didn't. Yeah, well, actually,
University of San Francisco. Right?
Yeah, actually, advertising was an accident, right? Because I didn't know anything about advertising.
I love this. I love this part of your life story.
Yeah, it just kind of slipped in somehow during the .com days. I mean, I did digital production. Loved it, actually. Loved it. And then it just all of a sudden was at Gitby doing a project for them, and they liked me.
Did you ever wonder if you were like worthy of being there? You were too ignorant to know. That's a beautiful thing. It's like you didn't know to be scared or to question it. You were just doing the thing they hired you for, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I had no idea who Goodby Silverstein is, how good they were. I didn't know till once I started and I got to know the industry,
right.
And I was like, oh wow. You know, but I had when I walked in for an interview, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about advertising because I was really on the digital production, small shops who worked for agencies and clients.
What do you think it is about you as a professional or as a creative or as a thinker? What personal trait of yours do you think has served you well to help you get where you are? What is it about Mike?
Being honest. I say, and... You know what? It can backfire, but in the long run, it always helped me to say what I think.
How does it get you in trouble?
Yeah, it can, of course.
But
like even
it's just
talking to your boss.
Oh, okay.
Disagreeing, but in general, just saying how you feel. You know, it always helped me. You know. I mean, I always feel it goes this way. What's the worst thing what can happen? You fire me. So what? I'll get a new job.
Well, yeah, if they fire you for telling you the truth, for saying the truth, why would you be there anyway?
Well, and you don't have to feel bad, right? So I'm like, well, I would say that's my one thing. I'm honest.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, and I'm very mellow. I'm a mellow guy. That helped me a lot too. And I think I'm
even-keeled.
Yeah, and I think I'm even keel because I learned a lot in high school because I was so bad in high school. That I learned like that stuff shouldn't faze me a lot. You know.
What do you mean?
You know, it was tough on my parents. You know,
Hard-headed.
I went to 3 different high schools. You know, who else goes to 3 different high schools?
Yeah, it's not good.
That's not good. Let's face it. You know, well, it's gonna work out. My parents always believed in me, they knew, you know. But yeah, and I learned a lot there, just to be like,
yeah, that's great.
Learn how to relax and stuff.
So how close are you to the interns or juniors that come in? Like what's the working relationship? I know that you're at executive level, but how close are you to the work? Do you interact with the younger people at the agency?
Yeah, so we basically have all the partners in every briefing.
Oh, that's great.
For Kia, we see all the work
so what do you
creatives come up with.
What do you want to see out of a junior team? What is important for them to bring when they start? when they're presenting, when they're working at the agency? What's a good way for them to get on your good side if there's such a thing? What's important?
I don't know if there's a good side. I just want to see some fresh ideas, ideas that are simple.
Simple.
You know, Mert Silverstein always told me that. He's like, if you can't explain an idea in one sentence, it's not a good idea. And there's a lot to it, you know. Well, nowadays, especially with certain digital apps or whatever, but you need more. But the core idea in one sentence.
So even something complicated like Waze, you should be able to explain in a sentence.
You can.
Right. Or Uber, one sentence.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. And if you can't do that, great.
Right. Yelp, I'm not sure I can explain Yelp anymore in one sentence.
Yelp?
But I think it's...
People still, yeah.
I'm not sure I can... Some of them I'm not sure I can explain in one sentence.
Yeah.
So if you could go back... I don't know if I asked you this on the last podcast. Listeners, if I did, I'm sorry. But maybe the answer changed. If you could go back to the day you graduated from San Francisco with your MBA,
Right.
what would you whisper in young Mike's ear? Knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
You know, I did the right thing, but I have no regrets back then. And no one really knows this. And now on the podcast, I mean, it's fine now, but after I graduated, I was illegal in this country for like 4 or 5 years. And that was tough.
Were you nervous about getting a speeding ticket? Like, really?
No, not about speeding ticket. It was more like traveling back to see my parents after 9/11. It was like impossible. And then I got married, and you know, when I went to immigration, they knew it. So I saw it. I'm like, so what's up?
What have you been doing? Right?
Yeah, how come you didn't apply for a green card earlier? I'm like, well, you know, because I didn't apply for it till about 2 years after I got married. And they're like, why wouldn't you apply right away for it? I'm like, well, I heard you would figure out that it was illegal, and maybe you think my marriage is not real, it's just for the green card. And that guy was just laughing. Yeah, he's just like, you're an idiot. He's like, he's a green card. Of course we know you were illegal.
So how does that work? You're here on a student visa, right? And that expires when you graduate or shortly after that?
Well, after college, you get like an F1, it's called,
Okay.
where you can work for 1 year.
Okay.
And then after grad school, you don't get another visa anymore because I already had one. You can only get one, right? So what you could get is like an H1, meaning a company sponsors you. Or
Right.
But I had no work experience. You know, I didn't know what to do anyway. So, but I didn't like. My parents were like, come on home, work here, and I'm glad I didn't do it. You know, I mean, it all happens for a reason.
Very
Whatever you
interesting.
do.
That's cool. Well, we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks.
Are you a citizen? Are you going to become a citizen?
Yeah, maybe. I'm still trying to figure out the benefits.
Yeah. What's your status?
I'm on a green card.
When you're so you're married though, right? To an American, to a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
So that gives you a permanent green card.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it expires every 10 years. You just
It's like a passport. Just get a new one.
Yeah,
Right.
just get a new one. But yeah, I mean, I think the only benefit is I could vote.
Right. Well, so maybe you should do that real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So by the time you hear this, we'll already know the results of this election. But right now we're like a couple months or so. Thanks so much for talking. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been fun. Listeners, make sure you contact Mike. You can find him through the D&G website, or you can email him directly at mike.geiger@dng.com. You can always reach me at danspodcast@mac.com. Make sure you like the Facebook page, and if you are in a good mood and you're enjoying these conversations, leave us a review on the iTunes store. Just search my name in iTunes and leave a little review there with some stars. I would appreciate that a lot, actually. Send you some donuts. Thanks so much for listening. Mike, thanks again.
Thank you.
Listeners, see you in 2 weeks. Till then, bye.